Hi there. Welcome back to Nothing Exceptional, the show where we review comic book based movies, compare it to the comic books, and also rate it on how well it does on the screen. In this episode, we'll be reviewing X-Men First Class, starring James McAvoy, Nicholas Hoult, and Michael Fassbender, and Kevin Bacon. A lot of you are not going to like this review because it's a Marvel movie, and part of my rating goes on how well it follows the comic book. Let's just start out with the premise of the movie. Sebastian Shaw and his group of evil mutants are attempting to start trouble by creating conflict between the United States and Russia. That's great, isn't it? It's not a hackneyed plot at all, hasn't been done a million times. This is actually supposed to be Professor Xavier's first team of mutants. Hence the name X-Men First Class. But if you look here, even in the comic books, where it says X-Men First Class, that's not the case. Let's start picking the movie apart now. We'll start out with Nicholas Hoult. A fine actor, very fine actor, but they changed the history of the Beast. One, as you already saw from the previous image, he was a member of the first X-Men, but he was with Iceman, Marvel Girl, Cyclops, and the Angel. And if you look at the cover of that, or a lot of the other early X-Men issues, the Beast was not quite blue and furry that early, and didn't become blue and furry until a few years later. Then let's move on. Surely this movie would not mess up the history of how Xavier and Magneto met, would it? Well, yes, it would. If you look at these images, one of these images shows an early meeting. It's actually the first comic book meeting of Xavier and Magneto. Later on, Marvel decided to give them more of a history together, where they had met prior to knowing that they were even mutants. It's not really the case where Xavier jumped into the water to stop him from trying to grab a submarine that was being held by Sebastian Shaw. Let's get on Sebastian Shaw's topic now. He wasn't a Nazi scientist that experimented on Magneto when he was a child. Not at all. Sebastian Shaw, according to the internet, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, whose mutant powers didn't even show up till he was in engineering school. He devoted himself to his studies and created Shaw Industries, becoming a millionaire by age 30 and a billionaire by age 40. Not a Nazi. It was just made up for the movie. Yes, it was, kids. Oh man, there is just so much wrong with this movie. Let's even look at Darwin, the guy that died. Hopefully they bring him back in another movie, because he ain't dead. That's just great, you guys killed someone off just for the movie. And the biggest beef that I've got with this movie is Xavier himself. In the comic books, Xavier started going bald right after high school. Happens to a lot of us. In the movies, Xavier had a full head of hair. I don't care about that so much as how they changed how Xavier became paralyzed from the waist down. Because in the comic books, there was a character by the name of Lucifer, who after Charles Xavier became a pain in his butt, messed up his plans and everything, Lucifer decided to drop a giant rock on him and cripple him from the waist down. And that was way back in issue number 20 of the X-Men, where it showed how he actually became paralyzed. Now, as you know, part of my rating system here at Nothing Exceptional is how well these movies actually follow the comic book. This movie actually had a decent story, even though it was created just for this movie, and it changed the X-Men's history altogether. It had decent action. It had good acting in it. But because it changed so much, I mean so much, it totally trashed its comic book history. Just to to make this movie. Had this been a movie that was created on its own, where it had no written history of these characters, I'm sure this rating would be different. But because of how much they decided to change, I'm only giving this 2.5 stars out of 5. It's so far off from its own history because it changed everyone's history. So until next time, don't be a dick.